The sweet aroma of butter and herbs filled the air as Maya Thompson wiped down the gleaming host station of the Southern Pearl. The evening sun cast a warm glow through the restaurant's large windows, making the crystal glasses sparkle like diamonds on perfectly set tables. At just 35 years old, Maya had turned her grandmother's cherished recipes into something extraordinary, an upscale restaurant in Charleston's historic district that food critics couldn't stop talking about. Tonight was like any other busy Friday, except Maya's newest server had called in sick with the flu. Without hesitation, she'd stepped in to help, something she did pretty often, actually. Her staff always found it amazing that their boss, the owner of such a successful place, would roll up her sleeves and work right alongside them. "Everything all right for table 7?" Maya asked one of her servers, adjusting the silverware on a nearby table. Her dark curls were neatly pulled back, and her crisp white button-down shirt was as spotless as the plates in front of her. "Perfect, Miss Thompson. They love your grandmother's special cornbread recipe," replied the server with a bright smile. Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. Her grandmother had taught her everything she knew about cooking, spending countless hours in their tiny kitchen, sharing stories about how she'd once dreamed of opening her own restaurant. But back then, in her grandmother's time, that dream seemed impossible for a black woman in the South. Looking around the restaurant now, Maya couldn't help but smile. The walls were decorated with black and white photos of Charleston's historic streets, mixed with colorful modern art from local artists. The tables were dressed in crisp white linens, and the open kitchen design let guests peek at the culinary magic happening inside. She remembered the day she first opened these doors 3 years ago. People said she was crazy to try running an upscale restaurant in such a competitive area. Some even laughed when she said she'd be serving refined versions of traditional Southern dishes. But Maya had believed in her vision, taking the soul-warming comfort food she grew up with and presenting it in a way that would make any fine dining restaurant jealous. The sound of chairs scraping against the hardwood floors and the gentle clinking of wine glasses filled the air as the evening crowd started rolling in. Maya checked her watch. 6:30 p.m., right on schedule. The regular dinner rush would be starting soon. Ms. Thompson called out Robert, her host for the evening. The Johnson party of 6 just called to confirm their 7:30 reservation. They're celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. "Perfect. Make sure to set up the corner table with the city view, and let's have a complimentary champagne toast ready," Maya replied, already planning how to make their celebration extra special. That's what she loved most about running the Southern Pearl, creating moments that people would remember forever. As she helped arrange fresh flowers at the bar, Maya caught her reflection in the mirror behind the bottles. She saw her grandmother's eyes looking back at her, and that familiar determined expression that had gotten her through culinary school, through skeptical bank loans, and through all those nights of doubt. The Southern Pearl wasn't just a restaurant, it was a dream realized for 2 generations. The kitchen doors swung open, releasing another wave of mouth-watering aromas, sizzling shrimp, caramelized onions, and the distinct smell of her famous butter sauce simmering on the stove. Maya took a deep breath, straightened her shirt, and prepared for another evening of making memories. Little did she know, this particular night would test everything she'd built in ways she never expected. The evening was flowing smoothly at the Southern Pearl when the front door chimed. Maya looked up from arranging fresh flowers on a table to see 4 people walking in, dressed in expensive business attire that screamed corporate power lunch. Leading the group was Richard Whitman, a name Maya recognized from local business magazines. He was the CEO of a major real estate development company that had been buying up historic properties all over Charleston. "Good evening," Maya greeted them with her usual warm smile, stepping behind the host station. "Welcome to the Southern Pearl." Whitman barely glanced at her, his attention fixed on the restaurant's elegant interior. He wore a perfectly tailored gray suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his silver hair was styled just so. Behind him stood 3 other executives. A younger man clutching a leather portfolio, an older gentleman with round glasses, and a woman in a navy blue blazer whom Maya would later learn was Janet Chen, a senior partner at the firm. "Reservation for Whitman," he announced, his tone making it clear he expected immediate recognition. "I specifically requested the best table in the house." Maya maintained her professional composure, though something in his manner already felt off. "Of course, Mr. Whitman. I have you right here." She gathered 4 leather-bound menus. "Please follow me." As she led them through the restaurant, she could hear Whitman commenting to his colleagues. "Interesting choice of staff here," he said, just loud enough to be heard. "Not what I expected from a place with these prices." Maya's steps didn't falter, but her grip on the menus tightened slightly. She led them to a premium corner table with a view of both the open kitchen and the historic street outside. The table settings gleamed under the warm lighting, and the fresh flowers created the perfect centerpiece. "Here we are," Maya said, beginning to pull out a chair for Janet Chen. But Whitman interrupted. "No, no," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "This won't do at all. Surely you have something better. Perhaps that table by the window." He pointed to a table that was clearly marked as reserved for the Johnsons' anniversary celebration. "I apologize, sir, but that table is reserved for a special celebration this evening. I can assure you that this is one of our finest tables, with an excellent view of both our kitchen and—" "Listen," Whitman cut her off, his voice dripping with condescension. "I don't think you understand who I am. I'm here to discuss a rather significant business deal, and I need appropriate accommodations." He spoke slowly, as if explaining something to a child, while his colleagues shifted uncomfortably behind him. Maya noticed Janet Chen wincing slightly at his tone, but like the others, she remained silent. The restaurant had grown quieter, with nearby diners trying not to stare while stealing glances at the unfolding scene. "Mr. Whitman," Maya responded, her voice steady and professional, "I understand completely who you are. However, all our guests at the Southern Pearl receive our best service and consideration. This table offers everything you need for your business discussion, including privacy and excellent service." Whitman's face tightened, and he let out a short, harsh laugh. "Well, I suppose this is what we get for trying this place." He looked around at his colleagues as if sharing an inside joke, but they seemed more interested in studying their shoes. "I just hope the kitchen staff is more qualified than the serving staff." Maya felt her heart racing, but years of experience in the service industry had taught her to maintain her composure. She began placing the menus on the table, her movements deliberate and precise. "Our kitchen staff is exceptional, sir. In fact, we've been nominated for several prestigious awards this year." "Is that so?" Whitman's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "Well, let's hope they at least know how to follow basic recipes. Though I must say, I'm already having my doubts about the quality of this establishment." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with one of the Southern Pearl's fine sterling silver knives. Other diners were now openly watching, and Maya could see her regular customers' faces darkening with anger at Whitman's behavior. The younger executive with the portfolio finally spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, perhaps we should just—" "No, no," Whitman waved him off. "We're already here. Though I must say, when my assistant made this reservation, I expected something rather different. Something more sophisticated." Maya stood tall, her grandmother's voice echoing in her head. "Kill them with kindness, baby, but never let them kill your dignity." With a smile that could freeze summer rain, she replied, "I'll give you all a moment with the menus. Your server will be with you shortly." As she walked away, she could hear Whitman muttering about standards these days and the help. But Maya Thompson had weathered storms far worse than Richard Whitman, and she knew exactly how this evening was going to end. She just had to wait for the right moment. Maya took a deep breath at the service station, straightening her already perfect collar before returning to Whitman's table. She'd given them the customary few minutes to look over the menus, though she could see from across the restaurant that Whitman had barely opened his, too busy holding court with his uncomfortable-looking colleagues. "Are you ready to hear about our specials this evening?" Maya asked, her pen poised over her notepad. The warm lighting from the crystal chandelier above caught the gold accents on her name tag, making them sparkle. "Oh, you're back," Whitman said, looking up with an expression of mild surprise, as if he expected, or hoped, someone else would take over. "Tell me about your wine list first. Do you actually know anything about fine wines?" Janet Chen, the woman in the navy blazer, visibly cringed at his tone. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again, her fingers nervously adjusting her water glass. "Of course," Maya replied smoothly. Our wine cellar is particularly well stocked. Given your preference for bold flavors, evident from your cologne, might I suggest the 2018 Camus Special Selection? It's a Cabernet Sauvignon with notes of dark cherry and espresso, perfectly aged, and an excellent complement to our premium cuts of meat. The younger executive's eyebrows shot up, impressed, while the older gentleman with round glasses nodded appreciatively. But Whitman's face darkened. "That's a surprisingly informed suggestion," he said, his tone suggesting it was anything but surprising. "However, I think I'll make my own selection. Bring us the 2015 Opus One." Maya's expression didn't change, though her heart sank slightly for him. "I apologize, sir, but the 2015 Opus One is no longer available. We sold our last bottle last week. However, we do have the 2016 vintage, which wine critics have actually rated more favorably for its—" "Never mind." Whitman cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Just bring us the Camus." He turned to his colleagues. "You see what I mean about the service in these establishments. In my day, fine dining meant something different." The older gentleman cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Richard, perhaps we should focus on ordering. I hear the food here is exceptional." "Yes, let's order," Maya agreed, her voice steady. "Our chef's special tonight is a modern interpretation of traditional shrimp and grits, featuring wild-caught Charleston shrimp, stone-ground grits from a local mill that's been operating since 1890, and a sauce that's been in my family for 3 generations. "Family recipes?" Whitman scoffed. "I thought this was supposed to be fine dining, not a home cooking show. Do you even understand what elevated cuisine means?" A nearby table had gone completely silent, the couples there now openly staring at Whitman with undisguised disgust. At another table, an elderly woman who'd been a regular since opening day was gripping her fork so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Sir," Maya continued, her grandmother's wisdom echoing in her mind again, "some of the world's most celebrated dishes have humble origins. Our chef has taken traditional recipes and refined them while maintaining their soul. The technique and presentation are absolutely contemporary, but the flavors are timeless." Janet Chen jumped in, perhaps trying to ease the tension. "That actually sounds wonderful. I'd love to try the special." "Hemph," Whitman grunted. "Well, I suppose I'll have the filet mignon. Medium, and please make sure the chef knows how to properly cook a steak. I don't want to have to send it back." Maya wrote down the order, her handwriting as elegant and controlled as her demeanor. "And how about appetizers? Our pimento cheese soufflé has received significant acclaim." "Just bring us whatever's popular," Whitman interrupted again. "Though I must say, I'm starting to wonder about the clientele if pimento cheese is considered fine dining." He looked around the restaurant with an exaggerated grimace. "Tell me, is the owner here tonight? I'd like to speak with someone who actually understands the concept of upscale dining." The younger executive suddenly developed a coughing fit, nearly choking on his water. Janet Chen closed her eyes briefly, as if praying for patience or perhaps divine intervention. Maya's pen paused over her notepad. She thought about her grandmother, who'd worked as a cook in other people's kitchens her whole life, dreaming of the day someone would appreciate her genius with flavors. She thought about all the nights she'd spent perfecting these recipes, transforming them from home cooking to haute cuisine, while keeping their heart intact. "I'll check on the owner's availability after I put in your orders," Maya replied, her voice as smooth as the bourbon in their award-winning bread pudding. "In the meantime, can I get you anything else?" "Just send someone who knows what they're doing," Whitman said dismissively, turning back to his colleagues. "Now, about this development deal." As Maya walked away, her back straight and her head high, she could feel the supportive gazes of her regular customers following her. They knew who she was. They knew what she built here. And soon Richard Whitman would know too. But first, she had some orders to put in and a plan to make. The kitchen hummed with activity as Maya pushed through the swinging doors. Her hands were steady as she clipped the order to the line, but her heart was racing. 3 years of building this restaurant from the ground up, of proving everyone wrong, and still, people like Whitman thought they could walk in and treat her like this. "Everything okay out there?" asked Lewis, her head chef of 2 years. He'd worked his way up from dishwasher to executive chef at one of New York's finest restaurants before choosing to join the Southern Pearl. He could read the tension in Maya's shoulders. Table 12 is going to be interesting, Maya replied, managing a small smile. 1 shrimp and grits special, 1 filet mignon, medium, and she rattled off the rest of the orders, then added, and they're particularly interested in meeting the owner. Louis raised an eyebrow, already knowing where this was going. He'd seen this scene play out before, though never quite this dramatically. Want me to make their dishes extra special? Make them perfect, Maya said firmly. Exactly as perfect as we make them for everyone else. As she headed back out to check on her other tables, Maya could hear Whitman's voice carrying across the dining room. He was telling some story about a restaurant in Paris, his voice getting louder with each sip of the wine he'd initially dismissed. And that's how fine dining should be, he was saying as Maya approached with fresh water. Not this attempt at elevating common food. I mean really shrimp and grits. On a fine dining menu. Janet Chen, who had ordered the shrimp and grits, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Actually, I've heard wonderful things about. Trust me, Whitman cut her off. I know about these things. This place clearly doesn't understand its market. I mean, look at the staff they hired. He gestured vaguely in Maya's direction without actually looking at her. No understanding of proper service at all. Maya filled their water glasses silently, each crystal tumbler making a soft musical sound as she set it down. The ice cubes clinked gently, a counterpoint to the harsh words floating around the table. Speaking of service, Whitman continued, acting as if Maya were invisible. Did you ever find the owner? Or do they not bother showing up to their own establishment? The older gentleman with the round glasses spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. Richard, perhaps we should focus on our meal instead of… No, this is important, Whitman insisted, finally turning to acknowledge Maya's presence. Well, is the owner too busy to speak with paying customers? Maya set down the water pitcher carefully. Around them, other diners had given up any pretense of not listening. The elderly regular at the next table had pulled out her phone and was not so subtly recording the interaction. Sir, Maya began, her voice steady and clear. I'd be happy to discuss any concerns you have about our menu or service. I don't think you understand, Whitman said, speaking slowly as if to a child. I want to speak with the owner. Someone who actually understands fine dining. Someone who can explain why they thought it was appropriate to turn a respected establishment into whatever this is trying to be. The younger executive was staring intently at his bread plate as if hoping it might swallow him whole. Janet Chen had her hand over her eyes, while the older gentleman was looking between Whitman and Maya with growing concern. Mr. Whitman, Maya said, standing straight and tall, just as her grandmother had taught her, I should mention that this building wasn't actually a restaurant before. It was a furniture. Your food will be out shortly, she said, her voice clear and controlled. And about meeting the owner. She paused, smoothing her apron with deliberate care. I think I can arrange that. I'll be right back. As Maya walked away from the table, she could hear Whitman starting in again about proper channels and professional standards. But she wasn't listening anymore. She was thinking about her grandmother's words. Sometimes, baby, the best way to teach someone is to let them figure it out for themselves. Maya headed toward her office, where her chef's coat hung on a hook, pristine and pressed, with executive chef and owner, embroidered in elegant script above her name. It was time for Richard Whitman to learn an important lesson about making assumptions. The soft lighting of the Southern Pearl caught the embroidered letters on Maya's chef coat as she pulled it from its hook. She'd worn this coat at the James Beard Foundation dinner, when presenting her grandmother's recipes to some of the country's top food critics. Now, she'd wear it to serve Richard Whitman his slice of humble pie. In her office bathroom, Maya checked her reflection. Her grandmother's wisdom echoed in her mind. Stand tall, speak clear, and let your work tell your story. She straightened the coat, its crisp white fabric a stark contrast against her brown skin. The golden thread of her name and title, Maya Thompson, executive chef and owner, gleamed under the light. Back in the kitchen, Louis caught her eye and gave a knowing smile. Food's almost ready for table 12, he said, putting the finishing touches on the shrimp and grits. The dish looked like a painting, golden grits swirled with her grandmother's secret sauce, perfectly seared shrimp arranged in an elegant pattern, with microgreens adding spots of color like an artist's final brushstrokes. Perfect timing, Maya replied, adjusting her chef's coat one final time. She could hear Whitman's voice carrying from the dining room, still holding court at his table. The older gentleman with round glasses suddenly broke into applause, and to everyone's surprise, other diners joined in. Maya raised a hand modestly, but she stood tall, channeling every ounce of dignity her grandmother had taught her to carry. "Please, enjoy your meal," she said, her voice warm but professional. "And Mr. Whitman? The next time you visit a restaurant, remember that excellence doesn't have a specific look. It has a taste, a feeling, and most importantly, a story." As Maya turned to leave, the rest of the evening at the Southern Pearl took on an almost magical quality. Word of what had happened spread from table to table like warm butter on fresh cornbread. Maya could feel the energy in the room, a mixture of satisfaction and celebration that made every dish taste just a little bit better. At table 12, Richard Whitman had fallen into a silence so complete it was almost visible. He cut his perfectly cooked farlet mignon into increasingly smaller pieces, barely lifting his eyes from his plate. The other executives at his table, however, had found their voices. "Miss Thompson," Janet Chen called out as Maya passed by their table a little while later. "I have to tell you, this is possibly the best shrimp and grits I've ever tasted. And I've lived in Charleston for 20 years. Maya paused at their table, noting how Whitman seemed to sink lower in his chair. "Thank you," she replied warmly. "My grandmother would be delighted to hear that. She always said food should tell a story and bring people together." The older gentleman with round glasses cleared his throat. "Speaking of bringing people together, Miss Thompson, we were actually here tonight to discuss hosting our company's annual charity gala. It's quite a prestigious event, usually held at the Richmond Hotel downtown." "Is that so?" Maya replied, carefully keeping her tone neutral. She'd heard of these galas. They were major networking events that could make or break a restaurant's reputation in Charleston's business community. "Yes," Janet Chen jumped in, shooting a pointed look at Whitman, who was suddenly very interested in his water glass. "We're looking for somewhere more authentic. Somewhere with real character and exceptional cuisine. Would you be interested in discussing the possibility of hosting it here?" The younger executive, who had been quiet most of the evening, finally spoke up. "The food is incredible, the atmosphere is perfect, and," he glanced at Whitman, then back to Maya, "the management clearly knows how to handle any situation with grace." Maya felt a warm glow of satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she dreamed of when opening the Southern Pearl, not just serving food, but creating experiences that could change perspectives. "I would be honored to discuss it," she replied. "Though I should mention that we're already getting quite booked for the season. Word seems to be spreading about our little establishment." "Oh, I imagine it will spread even faster after tonight," Janet Chen said with a knowing smile, glancing at the elderly woman with the phone, who was now showing her video to her dining companions. Whitman finally looked up from his plate. His face had gone through several interesting color changes over the past hour, but now it settled into something approaching humility. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I believe I owe you an apology." The table fell silent. Even the nearby diners seemed to lean in slightly. "Earlier, I made some unfortunate assumptions, and I expressed those assumptions in a way that was," he struggled for words, "prejudiced." Janet Chen supplied helpfully. "Inappropriate? Completely unprofessional?" Whitman winced but nodded. "Yes, all of those things. I was wrong. Not just about you, but about this place, about the food, about everything." Maya studied him for a moment. Her grandmother had always said that the true test of a person's character wasn't whether they made mistakes, it was how they handled themselves after making them. "Mr. Whitman," she said carefully, "in the restaurant business, we believe that every day is a chance to create something new, to take old recipes and make them fresh, to turn mistakes into opportunities, to transform furniture stores into fine dining establishments." She smiled slightly at the last part. "Would you consider allowing us to host the gala?" Janet Chen asked. "Though perhaps," she added with a pointed look at Whitman, "with different leadership organizing the event this year." Whitman's head snapped up at that, but he remained silent. The implications were clear. His behavior tonight would have consequences beyond just an uncomfortable dinner. "I'll have my events coordinator contact you tomorrow," Maya said. "And Mr. Whitman." He looked up at her, expecting perhaps another well-deserved rebuke. "Thank you for giving our shrimp and grits a chance." My grandmother always said that good food can open minds, if people are willing to take that first bite. As Maya walked away from table 12, she could hear Janet Chen taking charge of the conversation, discussing preliminary plans for the gala. The elderly woman with the phone was now showing her video to the hostess, who was trying not to grin too obviously. And somewhere, Maya was sure, her grandmother was looking down with that knowing smile of hers, probably saying, "I told you so, baby. I told you so." The evening's events would soon become part of the Southern Pearls legend, a story whispered among the staff, shared between regular customers, and eventually written up in the local paper's food section. But for Maya, it would always be about more than just proving someone wrong. It was about proving her grandmother right, about believing in yourself, standing tall in the face of prejudice, and letting your work speak louder than any insult ever could. 6 months after that memorable evening at the Southern Pearl, Maya stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her chef's coat one more time. Tonight was different from all other nights. She was preparing to accept the James Beard Award for Best New Restaurant in the Southeast. The story of Richard Whitman's visit had spread through Charleston's restaurant community like wildfire. The elderly customer's video had gone viral on social media, racking up millions of views. But what happened afterward was even more remarkable. The morning after the incident, Maya had arrived at her restaurant to find a line of people waiting outside. Some were there to make reservations, others just wanted to shake her hand. Local news stations started calling, wanting to tell her story. But Maya had bigger plans than just sharing what happened that night. "We need to do something meaningful with this attention," she told her staff during their morning meeting. "Something that would make my grandmother proud." And so, the Pearl Initiative was born, a mentorship program for aspiring restaurateurs from underrepresented backgrounds. Maya used her newfound platform to secure funding from local businesses, notably not including Whitman's company, which had undergone some significant leadership changes after that night. The program's first class included 10 passionate individuals, each with dreams as big as Maya's had been. There was a young woman who wanted to blend her Korean heritage with Southern flavors, a former factory worker with a gift for pastry, and a retired teacher who'd spent 30 years perfecting his family's Caribbean recipes. "Your background is your strength," Maya would tell them during their weekly sessions at the Southern Pearl. "It's not about changing who you are to fit someone else's idea of fine dining. It's about bringing your authentic self to the table and making that table better because of it." The program quickly gained national attention. Other successful restaurants across the country began reaching out, wanting to start similar initiatives. Maya found herself flying to New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago to help launch sister programs. But she never forgot her roots. Every Sunday, just like her grandmother used to do, Maya would close the restaurant to regular customers and host a family-style dinner for her staff and mentorship students. They'd share stories, swap recipes, and talk about their dreams over plates of shrimp and grits, made exactly the way her grandmother had taught her. Janet Chen became a regular at these Sunday dinners, often bringing potential investors for the mentorship program. The corporate gala she'd organized at the Southern Pearl had been a massive success, leading to a wave of similar events. The restaurant's booking calendar was now full 6 months in advance. As for Richard Whitman, well, he'd sent a handwritten apology letter a week after the incident, along with a substantial donation to the Pearl Initiative. Maya had framed the letter and hung it in her office, not as a trophy but as a reminder that people could change if given the chance to learn from their mistakes. Now, standing in front of the mirror in her Chicago hotel room, Maya touched the small gold locket around her neck, the one containing her grandmother's picture. The James Beard ceremony was about to begin, and she knew exactly what she wanted to say. 2 hours later, she stood at the podium, the prestigious award in her hands, looking out at a sea of faces that represented the best of the culinary world. Camera flashes sparkled like stars, but Maya's voice was steady and clear. "My grandmother used to say that a kitchen is like life. It's not just about following recipes, it's about adapting them, improving them, making them your own. But most importantly, it's about sharing them with others and helping them create their own recipes too." She paused, holding up the award. "This isn't just for the Southern Pearl. This is for every person who's been told they don't belong in fine dining. For every dreamer who's been asked to tone down their flavors or change their style to fit someone else's expectations. For every chef who's turning their heritage into haute cuisine, not by abandoning their roots, but by helping those roots grow in new directions. The applause was thunderous, but Maya wasn't finished. And this is for my grandmother, who never got to open her own restaurant, but whose recipes and wisdom now live on in every dish we serve. She taught me that true hospitality means making everyone feel welcome at your table, even those who might not welcome you at theirs. Back in Charleston, her staff had gathered to watch the ceremony on the big screen they'd set up in the dining room. The Sunday dinner crowd, students, staff, and regulars, cheered as Maya accepted the award. The elderly woman who'd recorded the viral video dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, while Louis, the head chef, started passing out champagne. That night, the Southern Pearl glowed like a beacon in Charleston's historic district, its windows warm with light and laughter. And somewhere, Maya knew, her grandmother was smiling, watching her granddaughter not just living her dream, but helping others achieve theirs too. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's using that success to open doors for others, to change minds one plate at a time, and to prove that excellence comes in all colors, backgrounds, and flavors, just like her grandmother always said it would.